Hello everyone, welcome to today's event. We're looking today at Unit 2 Standardisation. My name's Gareth Byrne. My role at Pearson Edexcel is as the subject advisor for ICT. Effectively that means I'm your first point of contact if you have any questions about any of our ICT qualifications. So everything from entry-level functional skills all the way up to our level 4 and 5 HNDs and HNCs and BTECs and the likes. So obviously today we're focusing on GCSE ICT and we're looking at the Unit 2 Controlled Assessment Brief. What we're going to focus on is some exemplar work from the summer series. So that's the 2011 CAB, which is entitled Get Up, Get Moving. I'd imagine that most of you will be delivering this CAB at the moment. There may be some of you still delivering Upcycle now because it's due to have one more assessment this January. However, the assessment criteria works across all the CABs, so everything we look at today will also apply to the work that learners do for Upcycle now as well. So just to give you a bit of background, I've worked for Pearson for about 3 years now as the subject advisor for ICT. Before that I was an ICT teacher for about 10 or 11 years. I was a head of IT for a long time and assistant head teacher for some time. So I've got a bit of understanding as to what you're doing in classrooms just now, how you're effectively getting hold of student work, how you're assessing it, how you're standardizing it within your departments. So hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions you have about the marking of Unit 2 work and the grading or the marks that you'd apply to different varieties or different levels of work. The work that we're going to look at today has originally been standardized and moderated by the principal moderator for Unit 2. That's not me, unfortunately. However, hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions you have about it. And if there's anything I can't answer today, I'll certainly take it away and pass it to the principal moderator, and we'll get you a response either way. But I'm hoping we won't have that problem. So we'll kick off by having a quick look at our next slide, which tells us a little bit about what we're going to do today. So we'll talk a little bit about in a moment about the questions and or the best way to ask questions or when the best approach for me answering your questions. Then what we'll do is we're going to look at some work provided by Candidate C. So if you haven't already downloaded the two zip files, the Candidate A, the Candidate C, and the Delegate Pack, please could you be getting on with that in the background? And what we'll do is we're going to look effectively at Candidate C's work in various steps. We'll go through the different activities and spend some time allowing you to look through those and deciding what sort of mark you think is due for the work that Candidate C has done. Depending on how we get on in terms of time or how we get on in terms of which of the activities you find maybe the easier or the more difficult, we may have some time at the end to have a look at another activity, another candidate's work, which is Candidate A, but we'll see how that goes depending on questions and the likes. So what we're going to do is look at the different bits of work, and we're going to get you to assess it, and then we'll throw some questions onto the screen that allow you to tell us what sort of mark band you think the student's work is within, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion based around that, and then we'll move on. So the outcomes for today, then hopefully by the end of today, you'll have, first of all, if it's maybe your first time assessing a finished piece of work, you will have looked at all the assessment criteria. So we'll go through each of the 4 activity criteria in some detail, and it'll give you an opportunity to understand all of those. Maybe some of you are possibly still working on activity 1 or activity 2, depending on your progress. We'll look at the various examples, and then we'll actually mark them ourselves. And again, hopefully we'll find some common issues that are coming up, and we'll be able to answer any questions you have about those. So what we'll do is we'll quickly ask you a question then. So what I'd really like to do is pop a little question on the screen that looks at your confidence at the moment, or where you feel you are at the moment in terms of confidence in assessing this unit. So if you could rate your confidence in assessing Unit 2 out of 10, please. Interesting. couple of people changing their changing their answer based on what's happening. Okay, good. Well. So that's a sort of a medium to fair confidence level, I suppose. Hopefully, then maybe we can run this poll again at the end of the session, and we'll get some idea as to if the work we do today has improved your confidence or left you feeling a little bit better in terms of marking the Unit 2 content. Right then. So, shall we get started then? So let's take some time then to look at activity 1. Okay, so on the screen there it gives you a list of some of the activities that have been done in Unit 1. So within activity 1, learners have been expected to search for and find relevant information for their profiles and their Get Up Get Moving campaign. They'll be expected to have looked online for information, and obviously they're going to find a lot more than they need at first. So there'll be an expectation that they can refine their searches or look more effectively for the right content. They're going to do some work creating the profile document. They're going to do some work on a database, and then they're going to produce a couple of digital products, so in the logo and the webpage. And then what we'll do as well is we'll take some time to look at the effectiveness of those documents and see how well they've done or how they've turned out in terms of what the audience gets out of those. Okay, so can you then access, please, in the files that you've downloaded, you should be able to go in now and open up the Candidate C folder. And if you go into the Activity 1 folder, you'll see there are several products there. So first of all, we're going to look at, let me just quickly change my screen so that you should be able to see the CAR document. So on the screen in front of you now, you should see a copy of the CAR document. And there's also a copy in the pack that I've shared with you at the start as well. So you'll be able to open up a larger version of the CAR document. And what I'd like you to do now, please, is to take some time looking through the products that affect assessment criteria 1A. So we're going to split activity 1 into 2 different sections. And first of all, we're going to look at 1A. Of course, 1A is evidence that the student has used a wide range of appropriate sources, including the database, and that they've used complex and efficient search criteria. So what you should be looking at now for assessment criteria 1A is, first of all, the investigation and profile, the source table, the activity 1 review document, and to a certain extent, you may find some evidence for some of the criteria there within the fitness database as well. But personally, I feel you're going to find the most evidence in the Activity 1 review, the investigation and profile, and the sources table. Those are 3 PDFs within the Activity 1 folder. Right. If you could then take some time to look at those now, and what we'll do is, once we've had a look at assessment criteria 1A, I'll pause at the end of that before we move on to 1B to take some questions. So work your way through those products. Make a decision, whether it's just individually or within your teams, as to which mark band that work would fall into. So the first low, middle, or high mark band, and that's the first question we'll ask you: how you feel, which of the mark bands you feel that work would fall into, and then after that we'll go into a little bit more detail and see within that mark band what score you think you would provide it. So I'll stop talking for a moment and I'll give you a couple of minutes to look at that work. Okay, I'm finding it very difficult to sit here in silence. So while you're still looking at work, hopefully it won't put you off, but it might be worth discussing assessment criteria 1A in a little bit more detail. So in my role as the subject advisor, I quite often get asked questions about what sort of work learners should be producing to meet these criteria, and also where you as a teacher or as an assessor will be able to go and look for evidence. And that's why I mentioned the documents in advance, I thought you'd find the best evidence for this particular criteria. So what we're looking for is not only can the learner search for information and search for the right information, but that when they encounter difficulties in their search, so perhaps too much information on the one subject, a lack of information on a particular subject, a lack of information that's relevant to them or to where they live or their area or their audience, can they then go on and enhance their ability to search, to find better content effectively. And the reason why I mentioned the various documents that you should look into, that is very often some of the questions that we provide in the Activity 1 review are designed to sort of pull out that evidence from your learners. So we ask a lot of questions about what type of searches did you perform, did you find it easy, if it wasn't easy at first to find the information, how did you make it easier, what did you actually do. So really we're looking for evidence that learners can do complex searches, that they can search by keyword, by category, even by postcode to find, you know, evidence that really is relevant to them. So for example, in this particular CAB, if they were looking for information on leisure centres, if you're based in Liverpool, what's the point in finding a leisure centre in Southampton, for example? So are they refining the work that they do there? Also, when they're looking at content on the website, on the internet, sorry, are they looking for a wide range of sources? So are they looking at information that's relevant? Are they taking into consideration the websites they're using? Are they up to date? Is the information dated, or could it be from 5 years ago? Are they looking at reliable sources? So, you know, are the websites biased anyway because they're commercial and they're trying to sell you a product? Those type of things. Are they comparing information that you might get directly from the government with it from information that you might get direct from a commercial organization again? So I think what you'll find is you'll find evidence for assessment criteria 1A in the answers to the questions in the Activity 1 review document. And you'll also find evidence in the sources table, because you'll see that your learner has looked at a range of sources, maybe the feedback they've given on their choice of websites, or their choice of downloads, or their choice of products that they found on there. Maybe that's very good at showing off their ability to discern what they're finding. Okay, so I'm gonna stop talking again for another couple of minutes and let you carry on looking at those, maybe for about 2 more minutes, if that's okay, and then I'll try and answer the questions. I've got a couple of questions popping up. I have been asked by one person if you're required to look at all the websites that is stated in the sources table, so I don't think we'll have time to do that. So maybe you can draw your conclusions by the commentary that the learners provided. Okay. Right, just 1 more minute, 30 seconds or so to finalize. So if you could get in your head now, together or in a group or individually, as to what sort of mark band, whether you think this is top, middle, or bottom grade work. Okay, so we'll do the mark band first in about 30 seconds. Thanks. Okay then. Let's do our first question then, based on this work. So I'm going to pop a poll. Oh, there's already a poll on the screen. Oh, that's good. Oh, I didn't think you could see that, but you can. So we'll pop that poll in. If you could, I'll just hide that next question. So if you could answer now, if you haven't done already, I think most of you have. Can you decide whether or not you think this is mark band 1 to 4, 5 to 7, or 8 to 10? Please. I think some people are changing their choice now. So, but please, let's go with your honest opinion, and rather than what you think other people are going to choose, and we'll hopefully get a good sort of a discussion going on then as to what you've chosen. Right then, so I think everybody has made their choice, have they? I've lost this. So many people at 23. Yeah, so we're not far off. So I think there's one more person left to vote. So if you haven't voted yet, you're too late, I'm afraid. So the consensus seems to be that the majority of you feel that work falls into the mid-mark band, so that's the 5 to 7 range. And I do have the principal moderator's comments here, and I'm going to share those with you in a moment. And I can tell you that in the majority we are correct, and the moderator in this instance has awarded that particular piece of work in the 5 to 7 category, in the 5 to 7 mark band. Okay. and they've done that based on the fact that the student has provided quite a detailed source table, I suppose, that shows a range of sources. It's worth me saying, I suppose, that as a former teacher, I'll try and give you, and somebody who's quite close to the course, I'll try and give you my opinion as well as the principal moderator's opinion. So we might not always agree, but we unfortunately it comes down to the principal moderator's choices. So we'll look at that, but I'm happy to give you my thoughts on where I think this particular work is. So in this case, the moderator thinks that it does use a range of sources. I'm not sure personally whether or not the range of sources is very strong. But it does show that the learner has differentiated between primary and secondary sources, and you can see that that's quite obvious. There is also some evidence of an awareness of copyright, and one of the questions I was asked was quite a good question on that. One of the questions I got from from Carol is, I see that in the sources table the copyright statement is repeated. Is this acceptable? And I think that's a very good question, because it's very important that your learners have an understanding of copyright. However, I don't think it's very important that they then analyze that in a great lot of detail for each of the websites that they go to, because very often different websites will have a similar stance on copyright, and also at the end of the day, they're students, they're learners, they're working in the classroom. So it's very probable that they'll be aware of the fact that the work that they're doing is for school's purpose. So it's usually in most instances fine for them to use any content they find, because they're not going to take that content further. They're not going to use it in a commercial capacity. They're not going to host it on the internet. They're not going to try and make any sort of profit from it whatsoever. Okay, and I think that's a very good statement. So to answer then the original question as to whether or not the copyright statement is okay to be repeated, I think that once the learner has shown evidence that they understand the copyright, I don't think they need to do it in any more detail than that. Another question I was asked was, for a wide range of sources, are you expecting more than just websites? Again, there's no sort of limit on where learners can look. However, I think you've got a lot of work to get through. You've got to get through in a short space of time. I think everything that learners need to find, they can find online. They can look at a very wide range of resources online. So I certainly mentioned earlier on that they could use commercial versus non-commercial. They could use government websites. They could use information that's up to date or old. So I think everything you need to find, you can find online, Liz. So I don't think, with that in mind, you should send them off to the library. After all, it's a digital course as well, so the more sort of non-online sources you use, the less availability there is of, or the less ease there is when it comes to marketing it yourself. Okay, and the final question I was asked, I've already answered right, so I've answered those three. Brilliant. So the next thing then to consider is what mark would you have given it? And I think most of you have already completed this question. So could you now please answer the next question, which is, what mark would you award from the middle mark band? Oh, apologies, let me just change that. I think this is something John and I should have changed earlier. Melanie, could you please change that second question so that it says from 5 to 7, please? In this instance, the mark that's been awarded to this, and it might be worth. I'll send you a message as to what the scores are for the subsequent ones. It might be worth you looking at when we go back to the presentation. If it's possible for you to make the change for maybe the next few are wrong as well, but. Let's hit that when we come to it. So most of you are entering in your score now. So please, can you say whether or not you think it's a 5, 6, or 7 marks? Lots of harsh marking, very harsh marking, as most teachers tend to do, which is great. What I like to see. Just so that you're aware, I'm going to quickly, while you're putting in your choice of 5, 6, or 7, I'm going to quickly remind you what the CAB says. The student has used a range of appropriate sources, including a given database, or in this case, including the web, to select relevant information for use in their digital products. So do you think they've used a range of sources? Do you think the information that they found is relevant, judging on the source table? That might give you a further sort of indication as to where you think that the mark goes, because we're being quite harsh to start off. Okay, I think that's time enough. So So most people coming in at 5 marks in this instance. A couple of you, another 7 for 6 marks, and finally, 4 people have decided on 7 out of 10 in this instance. So I wonder, can everybody see that okay on screen, Melanie? Right, in this instance, I can tell you that the principal moderator, has awarded this 7 marks out of 10. They felt that the work provided was good enough to make it into the mid-range category, although a little bit lacking in terms of discrimination of selection, and also the wide range of sources. So not good enough to make it into the upper mark band because of the limit on the evidence of using complex and efficient search techniques to refine their work, and also a lacking in the comment a wide range of sources. So while they felt there was a range of sources, they didn't think it was a wide range of sources, and I think that's quite apparent from the source table that the learner has looked at different sources, but they haven't given a lot of evidence to show off what they felt was different types of sources. So some of the comments from that I've written down personally here on what I thought this learner could do better would be, first of all, better selection of websites and better justification of their choices. So it's very, very clear in the source table document. There's a final. I'm just going to open it really quickly so I can tell you exactly what it's called. There's a final comment. There's a final column there that says where, how used, explain decisions and choices you made, e.g. why you chose it, used it, or how it helped you. And the student does refer to the fact that they've done some of this in the navigation and profile, they've done some, but really that's where I'd be expecting the user to say this source was good for this reason. And I think if you've done that on maybe 4 or 5 different websites and compared and contrasted the 5 against each other, so this is commercial, this is biased, this is non-commercial, this is non-biased, this is I hate to use the BBC because it's a classic example and schools use it really well, but this is from the BBC, so it's a trusted source. This is from the government, so I can take it that they're that it's there for the right reasons. So I think personally, that's where this particular learner has let themselves down. And then secondly, that they need to include better evidence of advanced searching. There's no real evidence of searching by category, of location, of keyword. These are really obvious examples of how you might search or refine your searches better. So I think in this instance, what the learner needed to do was better justification of choices, better searching. Okay? So I think we're probably overrunning already. So let's move on. And we're going to now, I'm going to just scroll down in the CAB document. And this time we're going to look at 1B. So if we could just, Melanie, could we get rid of those first 2 questions, please, if possible? And this time what I'd like you to do now is spend a little bit of time looking at the learner's logo and also their quiz. Okay, so we're going to look at the logo and we're going to look at the quiz, and I'd like you to spend some time deciding whether or not this work is into the lower, middle, or upper mark band based on the criteria set out there. And then we'll also spend a moment to looking at, or sort of then give some consideration as to what score within that mark band you would provide. Melanie, would it be possible to take that question away for a moment so that people can't answer it until we get to it? Is that possible? Thank you. Also, I might just send you a little quick message to say the next question, what mark band it should be, just to make sure we're looking at the right one. If you might need to change it, but I'll take that to you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop talking while you look at those products. I'm really sorry, I've missed the question that one person has asked me. Katie, we're looking at candidate C now. Okay, so we're doing candidate C, activity 1, assessment criteria 1B. Okay, again, I'll quickly take a moment to answer some questions while you're looking there. So I'll call out the person who's asked the question in advance. So I've been asked, what if students are trying to use websites such as Wikimedia Commons? If they use this as a main source, would that be classed as a wide range? It's difficult to answer because I don't really know the website well. So I think I'll have to leave that down to your personal judgment. I'm sure maybe it might be worth me coming back and answering that later once I've had a look at the website. However, I think using your personal judgment, your own professional judgment on whether or not you think that website provides the user with the learner with access to a wide range of sources. I'm sure if it's a wiki of sorts, then it does, because it gets opinions from from different people. But the problem would be with a wiki, I suppose, is the reliability and whether or not they think they could then class it as a reliable source. So that's the difficulty, I suppose. But I might have to come back to that one, I'm afraid, Phil. So we might knock that one down as not answered. Do we have a copy of this commentary? Yes, I'll provide you with the commentary, or I'll ask John has made it. We'll make it available for you at the end of this little session. So we'll provide you the moderator's commentary for this work at the end of the session. What is discrimination of selection? So, Ahmed, what I mean there is that the information, when they search for particular information that they need on their for their particular project, in this case, Get Up, Get Moving, that they're discriminating by refining the information. So they're looking at information that they feel is useful to them, and they're deciding whether or not, first of all, it's useful to them, whether it's relevant, whether it's reliable, and they're imposing all those factors on the information they're looking at to decide, to make an informed decision as to whether or not they're going to use it in their product. Do learners have to list any sources even though they haven't used it? It's good to show evidence of sources that they have used and also sources that they haven't used. However, I don't think it's necessary to use it to list every source. Personally, I think that's a lot of work. But it's good to show evidence of discrimination. So I use this because I didn't use this because. Is the logo Mario or Mario any version? Thanks. I'm not sure what that question is, Salvador. I think it is a picture of Mario, but I'm not sure what that question means. I'm sorry. Would you lose marks if they use a copyrighted image like Mario? I don't think you'd lose marks for using a copyrighted image. However, I think they would definitely have to show an indication, or they'd be expected to show. Okay, let me start again. They wouldn't lose marks in assessment criteria 1B. However, making use of images such as that, I would be looking for my learner to have considered copyright in detail and to show evidence of their consideration of that in activity 1A. Okay, so let's pull in the question then. So which mark band then do you think this falls into? So can you let me know whether or not you think this is 1 to 4, 5 to 8, or 9 to 12 in this instance? Excellent. So middle mark band in the lead at the moment. A couple of lower, a couple of upper. I think that might be nearly everyone. 21. Is that everyone? Nearly. Okay, so in this instance, then the majority of you have plumbed for 5 to 8, so the middle mark band, and I can tell you that in this particular instance you're correct, and that the principal moderator has awarded this a mark within the mid mark band. Okay, and I'm just going to call out what the mid mark band is, so that you can read it. So the student has developed the specified digital products using appropriate content and features, and they have reviewed their work and made modifications, some of which are effective. Okay, so you're looking for evidence that they've reviewed the work that they've done. I think also in this instance, I really love to see full use of digital products. So there's a really good example of this in the sense that this learner has produced an animated logo, so they're not tied down to a base. They're not considering, they're not limited to print. Basically, they can do things with this. They can post their logo on websites and make it interesting. They can include it in emails to people and have it animated and make it a bit more exciting. That's really good to see. And then just to get some idea, then if you were aware then the moderator had placed this in the mark band from 5 to 8, I'd like to know what grade you think it would achieve. So I'm going to ask you to answer the next question. So 5, 6, or 7, 8 marks, please. I'll give you less time to pay attention to this one, but we'll come back to it in a moment. Right, so excellent. I think that's most people now. So most people have plumbed for 6 marks in this instance. And I can tell you that you're all quite close. So in this particular instance, the moderator has awarded 7 marks, and I'm going to give you some feedback from the moderator, which tells you why. So the student has developed a logo and a quiz using some effective content and features. So just some effective content and features, and I think that's effectively why it hasn't got into the upper mark band. Okay, the quality of those 2 products, the logo and the quiz. The review provides evidence that the student has reviewed their work. It also includes evidence of peer assessment, and that they've made some changes based on the feedback. And also that the student has suggested some viable improvements. So they've gone through the feedback that they've got from their teacher or from their buddy, and they've said, this is what I could do to make this a little bit better, okay? The moderator has also mentioned what I mentioned earlier on. They've sort of given special mention to the fact that they've saved the logo as a still and an animated version, which allows them, I suppose, greater scope in the long term. And that the quiz contains some suitable questions, and they've mostly been derived from the investigation and profile, and that they also provide good ways of navigating through the questions. But I think where this particular learner has left out is that they could use better use of effective content. So the logo could be a lot better. They could make use of image editing software a little bit better. I do think it's redeemed by the fact that it's an animated GIF a little bit. However, it's obvious it's a small pixelated character which is blown up into larger size. But then maybe that's the look that they're going for. They're going for that sort of retro look. But if that's the case, if in this instance the user has been really clever and is going for that sort of retro feel of a pixelated character blown up large, then I think that should be mentioned in the commentary, and it isn't, I'm afraid. So personally, I think they could have made better use of image editing software and all the features that come with that, like layering and the different effects that they can apply to lots of images. You can really make some excellent stuff, and there's some great free software for things like that, things like paint.net and so on, all really good for producing images. Again, I think the quiz could look a lot better, and it could be better linked to the actual the CAB itself. Okay, so there's not a lot of links to whether or not, does it meet the criteria of the CAB. They haven't really given a lot of feedback on the answers that the person provides. They haven't provided an awful lot more information about the campaign. Personally, I think 7 out of 12 for this one. Sorry, 7 out of 8 in this instance, I think is a little bit generous. Personally, I'd be thinking around about 6 and maybe 5. So I agree with some of your commentary there. However, you can see why the moderator is given it in this instance, because it meets those assessment criteria. Right, so there's quite a few questions now on activity 1. So let's quickly answer those questions before we move on. The review shows the teacher saying this quiz works, but for me it failed at the end after Q6. It works for me. I managed to get all the way through it, Freya. So it could be an issue at your end. In terms of copyright, the students are in education. Why would copyright be of any importance to them? They will not be using it in a commercial. Yeah, but I think it's important that we're teaching them beyond that. Okay, so they need to be aware of copyright in the longer term. Yeah. Will they gain more marks by animating the logo? I think it's fair to say that they hit the criteria of the CAB better if they animate the logo. So for you to say that they have produced a digital product using appropriate content and features. So the features of this digital product in this instance is that it's animated, and I think that's what allows you to hit that criteria. So yeah, I think it's certainly possible that animating content would provide the opportunity for more marks. Do they have to modify all the products? Not sure what that question means. They certainly have to get feedback on all the products and improve them. Does it matter if they have produced a logo using a few tools compared with other pupils who may have used considerably more? They're both good logos, but obviously one pupil has greater knowledge of fireworks. Okay, so I think again, when it comes to your best fit approach, that's where you can provide stronger marks within a particular mark band to students within your group. Does it matter if they have lost marks here? Will they have lost marks here, as the logo may not stay clear when the size is changed? Again, I think in this instance, if they've gone for that retro look purposely, they wouldn't lose mark. But I think effectively that's why they haven't got into the upper mark band. That I don't think that they've got that the logo itself is is best suited for its role. The brief says they may animate the logo if they wish. If they don't, does this mean that they lose marks? No, they don't lose marks for not animating the logo. They may, like you say, Liz, the brief says they may. Again, it's about the effectiveness of the overall logo, of the overall product. Okay, so if the logo is animated in this instance, it helps you to hit that criteria, doesn't it? If it's not, then I think I'd be looking for it to be improved in other ways. Does audience and purpose? Yes, very much so. Does audience and purpose come into 1B? Very much so. So what we're looking for is products that meet their criteria, so that they're producing specified, the products as specified in the actual cab itself, and that the content is appropriate. So that they found it in the right place, that they know it's the relevant content to be used, and that it's appropriate to both their audience and to and the role of the actual logo of the actual product itself. Sorry, the online material for delivery of SB1 does not include any content about creating a multimedia quiz. I'm not 100% sure what you're asking me there. So in this instance, we're looking at a quiz because for Get Up, Get Moving, which is the 2011 Controlled Assessment Brief, one of the elements of Activity 1 is an interactive quiz. Amanda, Gareth, if you disagree with the moderator, how can we be confident that we're marking correctly if you work for Excel? Okay, I think in every instance, whenever we run these sessions, Amanda, we find that teachers or lecturers or whoever is delivering the course will have their opinion as to whether or not they feel a student has met their criteria within the car. What I think you can do in this instance is that, in my personal opinion, I thought I'd have liked to have seen some additional elements in terms of the source table being used better. And as a teacher, what I'd be looking for would be the best for my learners. So I'd be looking for them to produce content that I could really feel confident in marking it. However, saying that, what you're looking at now is a piece of exemplar material graded by the principal moderator, and you can see the standard that's been set within this and within the other pieces of exemplar that we provide. So you can mark confident in the knowledge that a student that produces this level of work can be given this level of grading within the set criteria. Okay, let's see. I think I've answered that. Right, so my questions have disappeared, so I think we've got through all of those. So we're going to move on now, please, and we're going to move on to activity 2, which will probably throw up the majority of questions. I think in this instance it usually does. I personally get the most questions about from teachers delivering activity 2. So what I'd like you now to do then is, oh, hang on, can we show this? Oh, I've got that. I'm going to skip that. So brilliant. We know we've got that for next time. So the car in this instance is going to scroll down to activity 2, 2A, and in this instance I'd like you now to access candidate C activity 2, and we're going to be marking based upon the work that's been produced within the spreadsheet model. And you could also, to a shorter extent, you could look at the activity 2 review as well and see if there's any additional evidence you need there. So a few minutes to work your way through the activity 2 model and decide which mark band you think this particular piece of work falls into. And I'm going to give you maybe 5 or 6 minutes to do that. Okay, I'm going to stop talking in the meantime. Okay, I think you've taken some time to look at the modeling activity. So what we're looking at is the assessment criteria 2A, and I'd like you then to again make a decision as to whether or not you feel that the learner in this instance has produced work for the low, middle, or upper mark bands, please. Great then. So again, most people coming in the mid-mark band, so that the student has selected relevant data and developed a spreadsheet model that generates meaningful information, and that it's apparent that testing has been carried out, but not all of it was effective. Okay, so again, this is a difficult question, so I suppose because some of you will have gone for the lower or well, one of you have gone for the lower rank, but you're correct in this instance that the majority of you have scored it the same as the moderator, in that in this instance the moderator feels the work falls into the mid category. I'm going to share I should have done this the last time around with you and I didn't. I'm going to quickly take that question away, and then actually before we do that I'm going to ask you where you think within that mark band it should fall. So in this case the moderator is awarded within the mid mark band. So within the mid mark band, where do you think the moderator's marks would lie? So 5, 6, 7 or 8 marks. Okay, so mixture of 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, what I'm going to do is slightly change the screen, because I should have done this the last time, but we've put the facility in place to give you a look at the moderator's comments. So I'm going to change the screen, and we're going to scroll down to activity 2A. Now, no peeking. You could, if you wanted to, go down to 2B, but if you could please stick with activity 2A, you can read the moderator's comments in this instance. So in this instance, the moderator has awarded 8 marks for this particular piece of work. And you can see that in this case, some of the comments I've highlighted some of the elements myself here. So the activity review provides some insight into the processes the student used to select information from the internet. So it tells you a little bit about that. So that's where we're getting the evidence of relevant data being selected. It also says that the student has produced a complex model, and remember, that's what we're interested in here. We're interested in a complex model that allows them to enter in a lot of variables and to make recommendations based on the outcomes. Okay, so you can see within the model that there's changes to values taking place and that they're affecting the rest of the model. So that's working through. So you can see how, for instance, the selection of a particular exercise will effectively edit the person's BMI across a number of weeks, and remember, that's the crux of this model, I suppose. There's been charts produced that show the BMI over 10 weeks, and also the moderator goes on to mention that the student's work misses out on mark band 3 because of the lack of review evidence, first of all, particularly when it comes to the questions of reliability of information. So they also don't explain clearly why the information generated by their model is accurate, reliable, or meaningful. Okay, so they're not using information in the review from either their own feedback or feedback from a buddy or a teacher to say why this information is useful. So while the model works and it shows that you can change some of the variables to get different outcomes, the learner themselves isn't going on to explain their understanding of what's happening within their model. Okay. I've also made a few of my own comments. I think there should be better evidence of testing through a more functional and user-friendly model. I think in this instance the model doesn't really suit the user. It doesn't make the person, and granted, the person using it might be the learner themselves, so they might be filling it in for whoever the individual they're testing the BMI is and so on. But I also think there should be a better capacity for a more user-friendly model there. I personally think that's important. I think there should be additional content to show how the information on the model is reliable. I think there should be ways of letting us see exactly what happens to, or exactly, why a lowering BMI is a good thing. So maybe, sort of color coding to the numbers or to the elements of the chart, that type of thing. I also personally think it could do with a little bit of additional effort on the activities. I think the activities in this instance are a little bit limiting. Okay, I think the user gives the learner the opportunity to put in a really complex variety of calorie intake, but in this instance, I think they lack in what they give them in terms of activity plans. So, you can only choose one activity a day. There's a limit to the activities they can choose and so on. So I think that's something else that this particular learner could do better. Let's see what sort of questions you've got. So we've got quite a few questions here. I'm going to quickly go back to the other screen so that you can scroll down if you hadn't done already. So again, we're going to move on to activity 2B in a moment, but just let's make sure we've answered all your questions. Are they allowed to have a fixed list for the BMR category? Yes, I think in this instance that's the way that the learner has used it. They've set a criteria as to what your BMR is based on some evidence that they found online. So I think that's fine. Where will the evidence for effective testing go? Okay, so evidence for effective testing comes from, it's inferred from a working model. Okay, so if the model does everything it's supposed to do, then the moderator can infer, or the assessor can infer that the learner has tested it effectively. So in this instance, I mentioned that the interface itself wasn't very user friendly, so that I suppose would be evidence that they haven't tested that sort of review. Wouldn't a complex move candidate into a higher band? Okay, so I think in this instance it could be more complex. Okay, I think in this instance this model could be more complex. So I think they have developed a spreadsheet model that generates meaningful information. And what I mentioned about earlier on with the addition of maybe a more complex opportunity provided for them for the user when they choose their plan of activities, I think that would have moved it into the higher mark band. But in this case, they've missed out on that. Where is the completed car for student C? I'm not sure there is one. If you can't find it, I'm not sure there is one in this. 8 is very high considering the lack of testing. Well, I think the moderator does go on to say that the student has tested the model because they've got a model that works. So the moderator comments in his commentary says, where is it? The student has mentioned testing, although comments are limited, however, no errors can be seen on the model, so testing can be inferred. So because they can't find errors, that's inferring that the testing has occurred, Kate. But I think the fact that it says not all of it was effective is testimony to the fact that maybe the right questions weren't asked. Okay, and then one of the questions from Katie is, there is no awareness of a specific audience in this model. I'm confused. I thought that was a really important aspect of the CAB. I think highlighting who the audience is at the outset of the model would help to generate a model of a specific type, with the right type of language used, with the right type of language used in the report and so on. But yeah, in this case, the user hasn't done it in terms of the model, but I'm sure they'll have done it in terms of the outcomes and the two documents that lead from the model, so the report and the poster. So we'll move on to those now. That's quite nicely. So I'll quickly go through those questions, make sure I've answered anything. If I find any that I haven't, there's quite a few of them popping up now. So can we take a moment, please, to move on to assessment criteria 2B, please? And in this instance, you're going to be looking at the digital poster and the report on 10-week diet. That's what the two documents are called within the Activity 2 folder. So could you take a moment to assess the work that the student has produced for Activity 2B, and I'll leave the car on screen so that you can see which mark band you feel that these particular products fall into. So lower, middle, or upper. So maybe 2 or 3 minutes for that, because the report document could do with a read, I suppose. Okay. I'm getting a few questions that are a little bit off topic. So if you've got a question that doesn't specifically apply to 2A or 2B, please hang on to it until the end, and we'll come back to those. Okay. So because my question list is starting to get a little bit difficult to get through. So yeah, if you've got a question specific that's not specific to 2A or 2B, please hang on to it, and we'll do a sort of a generic question session at the end as well. One or two more. Look at that, please. Okay, I think it's worth saying as well in this instance, so really the main feature of 2B is that we're looking for evidence from the digital publications, the products that the learners produce. We're looking for evidence that they've used information from the model. So that's one. Okay, obviously everything that goes with a digital publication is still relevant. So is it fit for purpose? Is it appropriate? Does it meet the criteria of the CAB and so on? But I think one of the most important elements in this particular assessment criteria is that these documents are showing evidence that they've used information from the CAB. I think that's really easy to do with the report because it relates directly to the content of the CAB, of the model. Sorry, I meant to say the model. It's less obvious with the digital poster. However, I think in this instance the moderator refers to it in his commentary. So again, I think we've started answering this question as well. So I'm just going to drag it into the middle, and then I'm going to take that one out of the way so you can't see it. So could you now decide if you think this is top, middle, or bottom mark band based on what you've seen? So we're interested in the report document. Still quite a few people to answer, so if you could let me know whether you think it's top, middle, sorry, lower, middle, or bottom mark band. There's definitely some use of information in the model and some overall conclusions, but I would have liked, personally, I thought the learner could have shown more use of details from the diet, talked about how changing a diet makes exact improvements. Like, so for example, in the report saying you've chosen this cereal for breakfast, but if you'd only done this, you could improve your overall, and you've decided to have Chinese food in the evenings on a weekend. So instead of having Chinese food, if you went back to salad, oh, look what difference it makes over a 10-week period. And I thought personally that there could have been additional content like that in the report, more better what ifs, I suppose. But apart from that, I thought, yeah, it fell quite nicely into the middle mark band, and I think the moderator felt that the work was of a strong enough standard for the mid mark band, but not quite up in the higher end. Okay, so let's see what questions we've got. Then we'll try and answer some questions quickly, and then we'll move on to activity 3. So surely you would expect the report to change as someone uses the model. No one's going to type out an individual report for each user of the model. That's a very good point, Liz. I know in a lot of instances, work that I've seen from Get Up Get Moving, in the majority of cases, that users have produced a report within the model and then updated the content on the fly, I suppose, and that you can make actual changes. However, it's not stipulated in the CAB. What you could do is you could get the model, you could sit down with the user and get them to choose their particular diet, choose their activity plan, and then you could produce them a report based on that. Okay, so I think in this instance it hits the criteria of the CAB, but there are certainly more efficient ways to do it. I agree with that particular comment. For the digital poster, how many slides are recommended for each mark band? I think again it's about fitness for purpose. Georgina, I think it's important that the poster itself does the job that it's supposed to do, and it meets the criteria of the CAB. And in this instance, I think it meets the criteria of the CAB, and I suppose the number of slides used is effective in terms of gets the information across. It's not boring. It's to the point, let's say. Can the report be within the model, or does it have to be separated? I think we've just covered that. It can be in the model, of course. That's nothing to do with what we're talking about. In his investigation and profile, he identified the user for the model as 13 to 19 year olds, but he has different categories. Okay, so we're back to that sort of question I think earlier on, Liz, about the user, or identifying the user. So yeah, okay. In this instance, I think what the learner has done is they've produced the model, they've gone in, they've sat with the user, and they've typed in the criteria for them, and then they produce a report based on that. But they haven't been looking for there isn't a requirement for the user to sit and use the model themselves, which is why I suppose what I mentioned earlier on why the layout could be better, I suppose, and the general user friendliness of the model could be better. Okay, I think that's all their questions. I hope you can hear me okay now. Melanie, again, please just type it in the chat window if you can. So I've sort of got this microphone thingy on at a funny angle now in the hope that you can hear me better. Okay, so let's move on then to activity 3, please. So again, candidate C, if you could move into the activity 3 folder, we're going to now look at activity 3A, which involves the design element of the multimedia product, okay, that the learners have to produce, or products. In this instance, I think you should be best focused on, from the activity 3 folder, you should be best focused on the activity 3 review, the podcast plan and script, and the website designs document. So that's where you're going to find all the work you're interested in for the design element of activity 3, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to go through that. I'm not sure this design element takes a lot of time. While you're doing that, let me give you some sort of feedback on the majority, or on the type of questions I get in this instance. So I think they are the major one here, the big one that we're looking for here is important design decisions. So do you feel in this instance that the learner has, through their design work, has provided evidence of important design decisions, and do you think, first of all, that the design has been done in advance? It's a real no-no for retrospective design here. So has the design been done in advance, and does it show things like what sort of plan that the multimedia product is going to take, how it's going to pan out, basically. All right, just maybe 1 or 2 minutes on that. Thank you. Okay, if you're ready, you might like to decide on a mark band for activities for assessment criteria 3A, and I'll wait until most people have put in the information that they require, or sorry, the information that they as they see it, and we'll have a quick chat about it then. There's a pattern emerging here, I think. It's fair to say. Okay, so the majority of you again have gone with the mid mark band in this instance, and I'm pleased to say that you're in line with what the moderator has suggested. And in this instance, the moderator has awarded the mid mark band for this particular piece of work, or for the design element of the multimedia product. And Melanie is just changing the next question ever so quickly for us. And can you then also answer where within the next upper mark band do you think this particular work would fall? Is there a moderator's toolkit? I've been asked for this CAB. Yes, the moderator's toolkit applies to all CABs. So we only change the toolkit when necessary. But again, if you meet the criteria, so when you're producing a particular piece of work, you have to ensure that it's accessible by the moderator. So have a look at the toolkit to see which one with the upcycle. I've also been asked a question about the upcycle CAB. Okay, I mean, there's a question about upcycle now and saying that the CAB stated that there should be graphical links on the homepage. No, we don't specify this time around that there should be graphical links on the homepage, but I'd imagine that the reason for them being in the storyboard or in the planning documentation would be that you probably find that most people will include some graphical links on their homepage. Okay. All right, I think I've answered all those questions. So if you could maybe take those away, Melanie, that would be great. Is the file size limit overall? Is there a file size? There hasn't been a file size limit at the moment, guys, but we are thinking of introducing one. If we do, we'll let you know, but there isn't at the moment. But I think it's very important that you can fit it all on a disk, and so it's good to get the learners optimizing images, and for things like this multimedia, they should only include the final product. They shouldn't include all the video or audio files that they've used to build up to there. Okay, so brilliant. Okay, so in this case we've had quite a broad range of answers. So 29% think 5, 41% think 6, and 29% think 7. And in this instance, I'll tell you that the moderators awarded this particular piece of work with 5 marks, the lower end of the middle mark band. And I'm just going to share the moderator's comments with you on screen, and you can have a quick read through those. So you can see that there's design documentation produced for both the website and the podcast, but there's limited detail. So really the content isn't really there. He's not producing everything he needs, I suppose. However, there is evidence of using some appropriate content. So there's suitable content for the podcast, but no timeline. The structure chart shows the links, but the actual designs themselves are very limited in detail. Okay. It also goes on to say what I thought was important. The student has briefly commented on important design decisions, but has not provided justification, and that's why there was no chance for getting into the upper mark band. Personally, when I read it, I thought that there was an obvious lack of design, and I thought really what's apparent is that there's within the storyboard document, within that document that allows you the opportunity, there's a really big section at the end of the page that says notes. Okay, and I think that's a really good indication to the learners that, look, you should be providing us with some relevant information in here. And I think that's where you get to point out to them that, look, in this particular piece of work, you need to show those important design decisions. You need to show justification of them. So the reason I chose this logo was because it suits my target audience. The reason I had this particular piece of animation was because it worked in line with the plan of fitness. Okay, someone jogging across the screen, that type of thing. So, making those important decisions, and there's plenty of space provided in those documents for them to include them. So I thought that was quite evident. Let's see if we got any no questions so far on that one. Okay, so while we're there, I'll quickly move on now to the website itself. This particular website isn't very involved, so it's quite easy to open the homepage and have a really quick navigate through it. I'll give you a minute or so because I think it's important that you have a listen to the podcast and get your opinions together on that. Let's go back to activity 3. So some of you may very well have looked at what the moderator said, but I'll trust you on that one. So in this instance, you need to be looking at the website itself, and you're deciding whereabouts in activity in assessment criteria 3B it sits. Okay, so is it lower, middle, or upper mark band in this instance? Okay. I'm going to go quiet because one of the things I noted from listening to it was that the podcast volume was quite low. So so you can hear it. I'll shut up for a minute. Thanks. Right, so I'm a bit worried about time. So we've only got 30 minutes or so left. So if you could make a decision, please, on whether or not you think this falls into the middle, the lower, middle, or upper mark bands, please. Okay, and this time I think the majority have gone for, let me just broadcast the results on this. So in this instance, the majority of you have gone for the lower mark band. But in this instance, the moderator is true to form and has awarded a grade within the middle mark band. And I suppose that pretty much leads you to have a good old guess as to what mark he's given for the lower mark band. I think it's evident, but from your own choices of the mark band itself. And I can see most of you are plumbing straight away for the lower end of the mid range, and you're correct to do so. I'm gonna broadcast those results as well, so you should be able to see. The majority of people in this instance have gone for 5 out of for the lowest score within the mid-mark band, and I can confirm that you're correct. In this instance, the moderator has awarded this learner for activity 3, for assessment criteria 3B, they've awarded 5 marks. You can see it just there, and I'm going to scroll down so you can have a quick read of the moderator's comments, so that they felt that they had produced the specified digital product, so they've done them, they've made them, they've used some appropriate content and features, and then that they also felt that the review document provided some evidence of reviewing feedback from users and making changes based on those. They felt that the website had a simple navigation structure, and that testing could be inferred from because the pages themselves work. They felt the podcast was a suitable length, and devised audio clip promotes the campaign as intended, and the student could have given more thought to additional secondary or primary sources to make the podcast more interesting. That's exactly what I wrote, actually, in my comments. I felt personally that the website was very basic. It was functional in that it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It met the requirements of the CAB. However, I did think it was pretty basic, and I also felt that there was a real lack of content on the podcast. A very, very simple audio file, just someone talking in the background, no real use of additional content to make that one more interesting. I felt that the moderator was personally I felt he was a little bit generous. I thought that, but I could see where the students got into the mid-range of mark band, because they've used appropriate content, they've used the features that they needed to use, they could click through the digital product without any problems, and of course there was some evidence of modification, so you can see why they've got into the middle mark band. However, I personally thought that the products themselves were quite limited. So only one question so far on this. So can the website be produced on any size of screen resolution? I think what you've got to be aware of is that the moderator has access to a browser, and they're pretty skilled in terms of using software. So if you send it to them in a resolution that they can't view, they should be able to adjust it. However, I think if you're going for something beyond the norm, if you wanted to do something that might cause problems or has caused problems on the browsers in your school, then maybe a comment for the moderator just to give them the heads up would be a good idea. Okay, any more questions on activity 3? I think we were pretty close to what the moderator thought. We were pretty. Again, it's good to see we're being a little bit harsh on the marking. I can see the benefits of that personally, but I hope what this particular session does is gives you an indication as to just what a learner has to do in terms of meeting criteria, and hopefully also giving you some indication as to where they can go to improve scores and so on. Right, so let's move on. Let's crack forward onto activity 4, and activity 4 is the evaluation. Could you please access it through the activity 4 folder for candidate C, and the file is called activity 4 final evaluation, and what we'll do is we will put the car notes on screen, and you can see exactly what the learner needs to do in order to meet the criteria within the mark band for activity 4. So quick moment to read through that. We're short on time, but I want to give you some time to read it. I've just been asked 2 questions about activity 3. Can Weebly be used to create the website? Whenever I'm asked for free software for web production, I always struggle. There's tons of really great apps and little free software packages that you can use for most things like audio editing, video editing, graphic images, and so on. However, web design is a really, really difficult one, and often I recommend Weebly. One of the reasons I like Weebly is because you can download the content and hold it direct locally as a .html file, and that's the important thing. If you're using something like an online environment like Weebly, you'll have to make sure that you can download the content and then you can burn it to a DVD and send it to the moderator, and they'll be able to access it and all the things that go with it. So can you download everything that they need? So all the images, things like the podcast running in the middle of it, they all operate and function normally. As long as you can do that, which I'm sure you can with Weebly, then it's fine. Can they use copyrighted music, e.g. from the top 40 charts? Again, I don't see a problem with that. I think that's a great idea. It really enthuses the task. It makes it a little bit more exciting. It makes them a little bit more interested. And finally, what I would say, as I've said before, if they're using stuff like that, they need to have a little nod to copyright and just show the moderator that they're aware of copyright and that they can, justify their use and say that if they were going to do something with this commercially, they know what they have to do. Okay. Does it have to be produced on Dreamweaver? I think that says. But I can't open it for some reason. I can't. Sorry, Melanie, I can't open that question for some reason. There's a question there, I think, that says, does it need to be reduced on Dreamweaver? But I seem to have lost all my questions when I click on them. Oh, hang on. Does it have to be produced on Dreamweaver or similar, or can we use an online web authoring site? I think I've just answered that, Liz, about Weebly. Weebly is the only one I've found so far that lets you download and save the files locally. Okay, that's the issue there. And then another question from you, Liz. If you disagree with the moderator all the way through, should we expect that the standard will stay the same, or are the standards likely to toughen up? I think the standards are set there by this work and by the other exemplar we provide, and I think you can be pretty confident that they'll stay the same. It's not that I disagree with the moderator. I've got my personal opinion as to what I would expect if I was delivering this in a lesson. I know what I'd want the learners to produce so that they were guaranteed to hit the assessment criteria. And they're all the things that we've mentioned along the way, or some of the things we've mentioned along the way, like with the activity 3A, the important design decisions. It's very, very evident that important design decisions are what pulls in some of the marks for 3A there. So I would be drilling into my kids. I'll be saying, that's the thing I want to see on this one. Okay, we've got to do the design in advance. We can't do it retrospectively because the moderator hates that. And we've got to include those important design decisions. Now that's the question I'd be asking to them. So I suppose that when I see where I don't not disagree with Murray, but where I like to be a little bit harsh is I suppose I get a bit disappointed that in this instance, that hasn't been drilled into the learner, because I think that's the obvious place where these kids can get marks, and that's evident from the supporting document that we provide. All the questions are there in the activity review documents. They're saying to the kids, answer this question, you'll get all the marks. And I think that's important. That's what I in classroom will be drilling into the kids. Answer those questions, answer them with the right information, and you'll get all the marks. It's easy. It makes it easy for you as an assessor. You can then say, I know exactly where to look for evidence of assessment criteria 1A, because the question is there in the activity 1 review document. What did you do to refine your searches? Show me the evidence. What did you do for evidence of complex search criteria? Show me that evidence as a teacher, and I know I can give you the mark, and I can be confident that the moderator will give you the mark too. Okay, sorry, I'm talking over you all reading the evaluation. I'm going to be quiet for about 30 seconds and let you go through that, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, I think that's most people. We're waiting on a couple. While you're doing that, I'll just answer a couple of quick questions. So one of the things I've been asked is, for the design on the product's website, for the design on the product, should they be done by hand or do they have to be done electronically? I suppose it's a tough one, I suppose. If you've got learners who are really arty and really good at doing the design content by hand, brilliant, let them do, or maybe get them to play around with I don't know, if you've got a little or what they call a little stylus thing, one of those arty pads that they can draw on. Maybe let them play around with something like that in the first instance. Get the feel for the digital approach, I suppose. But if they're really good with art and do it by hand, then by all means you can do that and then scan them in. However, personally, I think it's just another job for you, and I'd shy away with it. You already have a lot to do. And the second question was, would you expect to see screen prints in the evaluation or in the activity reviews as evidence? There's nothing stopping you including screen prints within the evaluation as evidence, and I think it's a really great tool for learners who are less able to get their evidence across in words. If a kid can put it in writing and it's obvious that they're hitting the criteria, and it's obvious that their evidence, what the skills that they've used or what they've done or the improvements that they've made, then perfect, let them do it in text. If you think a screen print is a better way for them to evidence that and easier for you to draw the evidence out, then there's no harm in it. Okay, so most people in this instance have plumbed for 5 to 8. It's fair to say that that there's a certain pattern in moving through in this particular learner's work, and I can confirm that the moderator has awarded it in the mid-mark band. And then, I'm sorry, I don't think we've made a poll for the next one, and I'm going to tell you what's happened in this one. So in this instance, if we just move to the activity 4, I've lost the activity 4 commentary. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see it, and I've moved it around now. Sorry, Melanie. Is that it? Yes, thank you very much. So now you can see on screen that in this instance, for the evaluation, the moderator has awarded the learner 5 marks from a possible 12, and you can see some commentary there on what the moderator said. Really, the evidence within the evaluation and the moderator's feedback is that although they felt there was a lot of generalization, although the learner has hit the requirements in that they've assessed their own performance, they've mentioned in ways to improve, they've talked about the feedback they've got, they've hit each of the products they've produced individually and talked about them individually, and that spelling and grammar is accurate throughout. I think it's very evident from reading the evaluation that it's a pretty personally, I think it's a poor attempt in that they haven't gone into an awful lot of detail. They've hit the criteria, but there's no real comments in there that show their understanding of what they could have done to improve. So they mention ways that they could have improved it based on feedback, but they're not showing evidence of their understanding as to that this is a digital product and this is what makes digital products better, and I could have done that to improve it. Okay. So again, a couple of sort of sweeping statements about, my test buddy said this and my teacher said that, but no true understanding. I think there's a lacking of true understanding as to how this particular learner could improve those digital products. Okay, right then. So we have some time. would it be worth? Would you like? I don't know how we get. I can't ask you a question. I think we've got 20 minutes as far as I'm aware. Melanie, is that right? So possibly we could look at candidate A and we could look at their activity 2 again. I think I got most questions from activity 1, to be honest. But I think maybe we could do a quick poll. Melanie, could we do a really quick poll? Would that be possible? That just said, what activity would you like to do for candidate A? I don't think we'll have time for more than one. So could you do a poll that just says activity 1, 2, or 3, please? Activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, and we'll do a quick poll to see what one you'd like to see for what one you'd like to cover for sorry Melanie, for learner A, and then we'll ever so quickly have a look at that. So it's just simply which activity, 1, 2, or 3. That'll do. Perfect. I think I know what you're going to say. I thought we got more questions for question 1, but I think activity 2 is more popular. So could you quickly say, I've lost it. There we go. Which activity would you like to look at for learner A? And then as soon as you've answered that, we'll look at that quickly, and then I'll answer any general questions that you've got. Okay, so that's pretty conclusive. Everyone would like to look at activity 2. So could you please open the folder that you've downloaded called Candidate A, and within Candidate A you'll find another folder called Get Moving, and you'll find within that a folder called Activity 2. And if you could spend some time, please, ever so quickly, looking at a Get Up, Get Moving model. And maybe we'll do it all at once. Yeah, we'll do activity 2 as a whole. So if you could take some time looking at the Get Up, Get Moving model and looking at the digital poster and also the report in this instance. Unfortunately, I think it's another one where the learner has done the report in a separate document rather than within the model, which is unfortunate, but we'll look at it anyway. So a couple of minutes, please, reviewing the model and the poster and report, and I'll put the assessment, the activity 2 criteria on screen so you can see those. So you can scroll down to activity 2 and you can see the criteria in one place. While you're doing that, I'm going to answer a couple of questions that I've got here. Do we have grade boundaries? Okay, Amir, the grade boundaries are set within the specification, so the UMS boundaries are set and they never change. They'll always be the same for every cab. You can find them on page 82 of the specification, I think. However, GCSE ICT is an awarded qualification, so the raw to UMS conversion happens every year during the awarding process. Okay. Now, the best way for you to get an understanding of what grade your learner work falls into is to look at the most recent grade boundaries and extrapolate from that what your learner would get based on that awarding, process of awarding. Okay, unfortunately you can't tell them exactly, which is why they're estimated grades, I suppose. But we do have on the Edexcel website, on edexcel.com, and this is useful for everybody. On edexcel.com, there's on the front page there's a thing that says results. Let me just get it so that I definitely say it right. There's a link to our results date information, teachers and exams officers, and on that page there's a UMS mark converter. It's a little calculator you download. You type in GCSE ICT, you type in your learner's raw mark, and it will give you the relevant UMS. Okay. National stats for the recent sitting of this qualification can be found on Results Plus. So yes, we do. I'm going to skip questions from now on if they're not to do with. Can you include the assessed car for student C? I don't know if we have an assessed car for learner student C and student A, Alan. I'm afraid I didn't make this pack, so I haven't seen one. I'll have an ask around. Let me give you some instructions on how you can ask me that question outside of this session, and if there is one available, I'll get it to you. Okay, there's another question about how does the overall evaluation differ from the activity reviews? Okay, very good question. So what you're looking for then is a student's evaluation of the task as a whole, I suppose. Okay, so feedback that they've been given on the task as a whole, feedback that they've received. So they're looking at reviews of whether or not they've been successful within Get Up, Get Moving. Okay. Also, they should be evaluating their own performance, which isn't something that they do within the individual activity reviews. That's a really important element of the evaluation. We're also, I suppose, to an extent, we're getting a picture of their understanding of the work that they've done overall. So their use of the correct wording and the appropriate terms throughout, I suppose. So we're looking for that within the evaluation tool, which we don't really look at within the review. So really, it's that overall evaluation of the work, the processes, and the work that they've done, and also the obvious one, I suppose, that comes up in every evaluation then is the ability to look at the work that they've done and suggest ways that they could have improved on it. Okay, now I do have moderators' comments for activity for candidate A, so I'm going to try and find those. Right, okay, I'm going to give you another couple of minutes then to look at. So we're going to look at activity 2, so a couple more minutes looking at the work for activity 2, and I think I've answered all those questions, have I? Can we get accreditation like Oscar? No, sorry, no Oscar accreditation. Yes. Okay. So you want a copy of the moderator's feedback? Yeah, that's going to be down. Melanie's going to make that available for you to download at the end. Right. I think that's it. I think we've answered everything else. Yeah, I think we've answered all those questions, Melanie. If you could take them off, thank you very much. Right. Okay. A couple more minutes then couple more minutes to quickly look at those, and then we'll have a chat about it. Okay, that's really good. Okay, I think that's enough time to look through that, and a couple of people have started answering already. I think again we're short on time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the moderator's comments with you straight away in this instance, and I'd like you to have a read of them and apply them to what you've seen. Okay, so you can see on screen. Let me just scroll down. I'll make sure Melanie gives you a copy of this at the end. So in this instance, the moderator has awarded a grade of has brought the student to the upper mark band and awarded a grade of 10. And there's some feedback there as to what they feel they do. I think you get the feel for the model straight away that it's a little bit stronger than the previous one that we looked at. It also it's definitely got a more apparent ease of use. I think personally when I use it, I found it a lot easier to understand, and I could feel that I could draw the conclusions from it a little bit better because I understood exactly what I was changing as I entered the variety of variables in there, and I think that's quite apparent. They've also given a grade. You can scroll down through this yourself, but the actual report and the poster, however, didn't make it into the upper mark band, and they were awarded the higher end of the bottom mark band. Okay, right. So a couple more questions that have come in. Then let's answer those while you have a read through. One person has raised their hand. Not sure why. I'll leave it to you, Melanie. Right, so first one, sorry to be a pain. Where is the raw mark converter, please? Okay, I'll say that again. So if you go to edexcel.com, and on the front page at edexcel.com, there's a little banner that says, it's one of the little boxes. It says results day information. And you can you've got two choices, either teachers and exams officers or students and parents. Obviously choose teachers and exams officers, and there's a UMS mark converter on that page. If I stick this link into the chat window, or maybe if I send this link to you, Melanie, you could share it with the group, please, for the raw mark converter. I'll just ping it in there. There it is. How is the sample selected? E.g., if it's 10, how do we know beforehand? Okay, there's a really good document. If you go to the ICT homepage, there's an update entitled Delivering GCSE ICT for the First Time, where I go through and answer all these questions in a little update. So it'd be worth reading that. So go to edexcel.com, choose subjects, choose ICT, and it's the first update you see, and it answers all those questions. Does the sources table need to be updated throughout the CAB, or can it be forgotten about after activity 1A? Activity 1. I think you can see evidence in this mark in activity 2, Liz, where they're asking for the student having selected the relevant data. So, some of the information that they'll find to put into their spreadsheet might be affected by the sources table. I think it's a greater source of evidence for activity 1. However, I think it's important that learners make use of the source table in the right way and are aware that it's something that they need to produce, and that keeping hold of your sources is a very important part of this course. So personally, I think they should update it throughout. However, it's more apparent and more useful in terms of marking activity 1A. I am confused about why the review affects the marks in 2A. Review isn't mentioned in the mark scheme. Okay, so the review document, again, I've sort of mentioned this earlier on. It's our way of trying to give you or encourage you to pull out the right sort of evidence to mark the criteria. I agree with you in that I don't think it affects assessment criteria 2A in much, because it's not as necessary, because a lot of the evidence the evidence can be seen directly in the model. However, there are questions in the review document that say things like, draw out evidence about the use of what-if scenarios, the understanding that the changing of the variables will affect the overall outcomes of the model itself. So you as the assessor can use that activity review document to find some evidence. Okay, I'm going to crack on. I'm sorry, because I think Melanie needs to do couple of little things. Do students need to provide digital development versions of their logo and digital? No, they don't. Just the final version will do. Right, Melanie, I think that's it in terms of questions. I'll hang around and answer any questions towards the end if you've got some more, so please do type them in. But I think Melanie or John needs to come back and have a quick chat to you to make sure you get all the documents you need, and to also finish us off correctly. Thank you very much for today. If there's anything I can do in terms of answering questions, you can contact me on the teachingict@pearson.com address. Okay, Melanie, I'm gonna put up the last screen, and then I'll let you take over from there. Sorry, thank you.